Hello, everyone, and good evening. Welcome to Cosmic Conversations. I'm your host, Sheila Seppi, and you are watching us right here on the Conscious Awakening Network. Now, if you're viewing us on the website, thank you so much for joining us. And I would love for you to take a quick look around at all the cool stuff that we've got, all the great videos, all of the events, past and upcoming. And if you're listening to us on any of our podcast locations, thank you so much. We really do appreciate that too. Now, if you have not already downloaded our phone app, just visit your app store. You can download it free. That way, you never have to miss us on Cosmic Conversations. Now, I'm really excited tonight to introduce a special guest to you. In this episode, we have Gail McLeod. Now, she is a nurse, a chiropractor. I can't talk tonight. She's an ET experiencer, a channel, and a medical intuitive. She's a seer, a medium, a star seed healer. And tonight we're going to have a galactic conversation about aliens. So welcome, Gail. I can't speak very well tonight, but welcome. And if you could tell our audience just a little bit more about yourself and how you came to be where you are today.
Well, that's a story in itself, but mine is been very short journey. Especially, it started happening in 2020 when we went in with COVID. It was the first time in my life I wasn't taking care of anybody. I was retired from nursing. I was retired from chiropractic. I'd been taking care of my dad with dementia, and he'd passed away. So it was the first time. So I had a list of things I wanted to do, and one of those things was start meditating. I had never done it before, but I decided, okay, I'm going to try this. Now, in my past, I've always known when somebody has passed. I've always known when there was a ghost in the room. I've always known all these things, but I was always dismissed on what I was seeing or smelling or anything like that. Everybody just dismissed me. But everything's turned around in 2020 when I started meditating and all these gifts started arriving for me, and I was able to create a special place to meet my dad who had passed. And he would introduce me to angels. He was introducing me to the aliens. And then the aliens asked me to work with them. And so I started working with them. My first spaceship that I was working on was called the Ashtar Medical One. And we were doing rescue missions to go into these Area 51 places to rescue the sick and dying aliens that were not going to survive. And they had been captured by humans, and it's not just Area 51; it's all through the Midwest. These places that they're captive in. So we were going and rescuing them. Also, we were going to Antarctica and all over the world to get these extraterrestrials or aliens. And so during that time when I was doing these rescue missions, I was involved with quite a few different aliens. My very first one that I met was that I worked with that I met was named Monto, which was a gold being from the star Solaris, and he taught me how to fly a spaceship and taught me all sorts of things on how to take care. Now they were interested in me because I was intuitive and I had the medical background. So, of course, it was a natural fit for me to be working on the Astro Medical One, which was a medical spaceship, kind of like our hospitals. And so I was going to really talk about the hybridization program, the human hybridization program, especially since, Sheila, that has been your focus is the walk-ins, the hybrids, and the star seeds. And I was just going to talk about my involvement with that program, which is pretty extensive. That my first encounter with that was they came to me asking me if I would go to Chile and do a C-section. A C-section, I'm excited, babies. So, it was a far cry from what I had been doing, taking care of the sick and the dying and doing all those kind of things. So it was a happy thing to be going to get to deliver babies. So we were going to Chile, and it's a program that involves two. This part of the program involved two women. One was a human, and one was an alien. And the alien was a gray hybrid. And the gray hybrid means they're a mix, and that means they are gray and a human, but because they look gray, they're called gray hybrid. If they look human, it's called a human hybrid. So whatever they look like is the first name, and then it's hybrid after that. So this C-section that we were doing is a woman from Chile who was had agreed, because she could not have any children, agreed to carry two. She agreed to carry a gray hybrid and a human hybrid. She would be able to keep the human hybrid baby, and the gray hybrid would go to the Astar Medical One, to a woman who could not have children on that spaceship. So it was two women who could not have children would be getting a baby. So I was all in on for this program. It's going to make two women who couldn't have children all of a sudden have children. And of course, they're very aware of what kind of children they were having. And they would not be noticed, and society would never pick up that it's a hybrid child. And there were some special things we had to do when we went to do the C-section. The C-section, I said, it was in Chile. It was in this big isolated metal building. And we walked to the back of the building where there was a huge operating room full of equipment, full of aliens and humans working together to do the C-sections, running around. And so one of the things, and usually with a hybrid child, that a lot of them have special needs, and these two children would have special needs. The first thing we had to do was they had to be transfused immediately upon delivery. The grays, when you're doing a blood transfusion, when you're doing a blood transfusion, you can just put cream on their skin and it absorbs. Whereas, of course, humans, you have to start an IV. So the calculations had to be done, which the Astro Medical One did all the calculations, prepared the transfusions for us, which we took down with us to this operating room. So I was to want to take care of the gray hybrid baby. I was to take it when it was delivered and take it to the gray hybrid ship, which is the Astar Medical One. And that was my job. So it was successful. And little gray babies are only like 2 pounds. They are tiny, tiny. We thought something was wrong with the baby, but we were told, oh no, that's normal for gray to have tiny little babies. So that was a success, and I was all happy and willing to do that multiple times. Then there was the next segment of the program where I was called up to the spaceship, and they said they took me into a different room. Wasn't in this room, and of course my crew that I worked with was going with me. Everybody stopped at the door, and they were in front of me, and I had to weave my way through. And an alien stood up and handed me a human-looking baby in my arms, and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to raise this? What am I doing with this human baby? They said, no, you're taking this baby to a couple in California. And it was a hybrid baby. Again, it was a couple who could not get pregnant. They've been trying for 7 years. They were on the adoption list. They could not get pregnant. And I was to go just knock on the door and give them this baby and go through all the details of what the baby needed. Now, I was so hesitant about that. I'm going, you don't know humans. So they're not just going to let me in the door. But sure enough, I went and knocked on the door, and that woman just let me right in with that baby. And so she called her husband home, and I went over the whole program and what was going on with that, and that there was a hybrid baby. The baby was required to have, again, special needs. It would have a special formula for a year, and the formula would be adjusted all year long. And of course, it was a human gray mixture formula. The baby could not go outside the house for a year, but after a year, it could go into being just a normal child. And they were to call it a special needs baby in the beginning. So again, it was a program where a couple couldn't have children, were able to have a child. Oh, you hear my cat crying. She's wanting to go outside. I'm sorry. Apologize for my cat. She's getting mad because I'm not getting up and letting her outside. But we also took another baby 2 weeks later to that same couple, another hybrid baby that they took. So they had one boy, one girl by the time they had accepted these two children and to raise as their own. Then the next thing I did, I'm looking at my notes here. Looking down my notes, what my next one was. It was, okay. There is a gray hybrid community down in Africa that's being developed. And there's a young lady, she was probably about 20, who was one of these gray hybrids. And she got pregnant by one of the natives that were around there. And so it was a really sticky situation. And they sent me down to handle it. I'm going, what am I supposed to do? I'm just going to go down there and go, oh, do you want to, what are we going to do with this baby? But anyway, I was sent down to deliver the baby with this little girl. And the problem with that was the natives that were there did not want this child to survive, and they were going to steal this baby. So the girl who was delivering the baby wanted to give it up for adoption because she said she could not keep the baby safe. So I was there and I delivered it and I took her back with the spaceship with me just to make sure she wanted to give the baby up for adoption. So that was another part of it. And my last one to this date is another part of the program where I have developed a clinic up on this Astro Medical One, and it is for the hybrid babies. The negative reptilians have discovered where some of these hybrid babies are and are after them because they do have special gifts. And I'm having to go and get these babies and take them up to a spaceship to keep them safe while we decide what to do with the parents, if they're going to move or what's going to happen with that. So I've been real involved in that lately. I don't quite want to go quite totally in the details of that yet because I'm not real sure how this is going to play out at this time. So that is my human hybridization program.
Now, how did you get involved with all of this? I mean, I know you've shared just a little bit, but are you a hybrid yourself? Have you discovered your own lineage? How did this happen and at what age?
Well, this is all started for me in 2020. This all is all, it's been very short. And, the aliens came to me and asked me to work with them. And then when I started working with them, I kept asking them, why me? Why me? They kept going, because you look human. And I'm going, what kind of answer is that? Of course I look human. But they kept repeating it over and over again. And then they would say, well, you're not ready for the answer yet. And finally, when I had been working on the Astro Medical One, which I am a neurosurgeon on that spaceship where I'm taking out implants, adjusting the people's chemistries, balancing their chakras, um, and their hormones, and all sorts of things that I'm doing on that spaceship to help people, not just extraterrestrials, humans also. And so finally, one day, when I was talking to the captain said, everybody who works on the spaceship's a hybrid, and everybody we work on are hybrids. This is a hybrid spaceship. Well, I was the only human on there. So I'm first thinking that doesn't include me. That's the first thing I thought. And then I realized by the time I was walking out of his office, I went, holy crap, I work on this spaceship. I work on the spaceship. I'm a hybrid. It really took me several weeks to be able to digest that information because I was not aware of it at all, but it totally made sense. And my background is I'm Arcturian. I'm a human Arcturian mix. And that's what I discovered that I am. I am hybrid.
And so, do you have any idea how you became a hybrid?
Yes. They brought in DNA, and my mother was one part of this program. My mother could not get pregnant, and she agreed with them to have me. So they connected. It was my mother and father's DNA plus alien DNA, and she agreed to have a hybrid child. So I didn't put all that together till later. As I said, it took me several weeks to integrate that information because I had no idea at that time. I'm very fine with it and I'm fine talking about it, but at that time I was not. I was not good with talking about it.
Right, right. I can imagine. And so, you've talked about going on to the ships. Um,
Mhm.
And are these, because you mentioned the Arcturians as well, are these Arcturian ships that you're
Well,
going on?
the Astro Medical one is a hybrid ship. It works only on hybrids, so it can be a gray Arcturian, can be a gray human, or it can be any kind of reptilian. I had to adjust my operating room to what kind of species I was working with. I had to adjust to what was comfortable for them, and but I have gone on with the rescue missions. I was going to all different types of spaceships. Like if we rescued Arcturians, Arcturians typically had breathing issues on Earth. They cannot breathe our air for very long. They have a special cream that they put all over their body that to breathe on Earth. And when they run out of it, they're in trouble. So if they get captured, they get in trouble. The Greys, a lot of times, have trouble digesting food that's here on Earth. So they get in trouble being hungry and being starved. The reptilians, they tend to, for some reason, they really like experimenting on them. And like they will put an appendix on one or they'll make one blind. And they did all sorts of kind of cruel things to them. And so I would go in and get them and take them to their spaceship. So the Arcturian spaceship is my favorite spaceship to go on. It is absolutely beautiful, but extremely quiet. When I go on there, I know it sounds like we're just echoing all over the place because they're all telepathic, and humans, we are so noisy. And when I go on that spaceship, I feel like that I'm like the heaviest, biggest thing, klutzy going on that spaceship, but it's beautiful. That spaceship is like blues and purples and like ambers in certain places. That spaceship's beautiful.
Wow.
But I've been on a lot of different spaceships, and I have moved to working on the next spaceship I worked on was called the Athena, which it is an Arcturian spaceship, but it was like a trauma center. It went and picked up big traumas, injuries, things that were happening to people, war, and we would bring people in and take care of them. The and I know a lot of people talk about have experienced this, but I've experienced it firsthand where you, um, like, I don't give an example as a soldier who gets injured in war is brought in to one room and he gets to decide if he wants to stay with this lifetime or go on to the next lifetime. And that's the one room. I didn't have much to do with that room. My part was when they decided they wanted to stay in their body, that they would move to another room and we would put them in tanks and hook them up and move their bodies or consciousness out of their bodies. And we also had cloning tanks in there too. So I would have to go in and I was checking on all that, making sure they were okay. And the first time young soldiers, they would be freaking out because they're up there, the consciousness is looking down at their bodies, and I would have to calm them down. And so I was real involved in that for a while. Then they moved me to another spaceship, which was called the Alphabet. And that was more of a triage where I was seeing everything that's happened. And I would send, if a Palladium was injured, I'd send it to the Palladium hospital. If a Arcturian was injured, I'd send it to an Arcturian hospital. So that's what I was doing on that spaceship. I'm back onto the Astro Medical one, the very first one, because I decided I wanted back on that spaceship because I was developing the clinic for these
Mm,
children or these babies that we're rescuing right now.
okay. Many people talk about that the most active hybridization program is with the Greys.
Yeah.
Um, and okay, so you're in agreement with that. Can you describe a little bit about why that is and some of the techniques that they employ?
Well, I don't know the details about the techniques yet. I think I will in the future. I think right now they're just showing me different segments of what happens and how it's done and why it's being done. And as I said, it's done for both humans and grays. And we're all thinking this because the grays cannot have children. They cannot have twins. But we're also decreasing in our population too. So we're not having as many childbirths here on Earth also. So this is help. beneficial in both humans and grays to have this program. Now, they are big in genetics, and there's a lab, and I haven't even been to that lab. It's on the other side of the spaceship because I stay in my medical area where I'm comfortable, and that's where they're doing all the kind of creating the DNA and doing all the DNA kind of things. And I haven't ventured over there yet to see how it's done, but most of the time it is taking DNA from the original parents and just adding DNA to the ovum or whatever is fertilized. That's what I have seen the most of. I know I've been told, or somebody has talked about other different ways, but like people being impregnated and taking up a spaceship and taking the baby. I've heard all those things. I have not seen that. I have not been a part of that, so I can't answer to that. I do think I will see that in the future.
Mm. Okay. And have you ever experienced anything on these craft that would cause you to be concerned for the babies or, anyone that's on there? Because sometimes people have negative experiences and they come back, and of course, they share more negative, or the negative gets shared quicker. Sometimes it seems than all the positive experiences. Because I can honestly say, I have not talked with people who really have negative experiences. It seems that all the beings that they encounter are very benevolent. And yes, when you actually, I guess, come down to it on a soul level, the person who is having these experiences has agreed to have these experiences. And in fact, the beings that they say have abducted them are from their own soul lineage.
That's my understanding also, Sheila. However, and I do think that's true. And there was occasionally on the spaceship, and I wasn't involved in this, I would see somebody running down the hall screaming that was in a gown. And they're chasing after them. And I'm sitting there going, why are they doing that? They're just helping them. They're just going through a medical procedure. They need us. Why are they running away? But I don't think they know how to totally communicate what is happening. I think there's like a barrier on communications that might be what's happening. You hear a lot of the insectoids, like the mantis beings, like if they're there, they're very soothing and can, talk to whoever's in there. But I'm not sure about the grays, how soothing and how comforting they are, unless they are a gray hybrid with these people who are being so-called abducted. I don't think they're being abducted. I think they're being taken up to find out how they're doing on Earth, how they're experiencing on Earth, how their body's functioning on Earth. And I do think it is their family that's checking on them. Now,
Okay.
I mean, as children's a thing, when we go to the operating room, when we don't understand what's going on, what do? We're
Right.
screaming and yelling. And I mean, I can't tell you how many crying babies and things I've taken back to the operating room. And it's kind of the same thing. We're not able to communicate that we keep saying you're going to be okay, but they don't understand that.
Right. Right. And have they ever shared like the number of hybrids that are here on the planet at this time?
No, but it's a whole lot more than we think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hearing the number 300,000 right now, just in the US.
Mm. Beautiful.
Not sure I'm not sure if that's correct. Let me just check on that. Yeah, 300,000 just in the US right now.
Okay. And so with the hybrids that are here, my understanding, and with the hybrids that I've worked with, they tend to serve as a bridge between our off-planet families and our on-planet families. Have you been given any information as to why it's necessary at this time to have this bridge?
Well, they call me the communicator, and it is for that exact reason, is that I am the bridge. I can get the information from them and translate it to humans, and the humans I could, you know, ask questions about their background and their connection with the aliens, and I can get the information. That is the part of being an alien medium, is that I am, but the aliens call me a communicator. That they've said that from day one, that I'm the communicator.
Hmm. Okay. And so I assume that that's your main role is being a communicator, sharing these stories. Excuse me. Okay. I was going to also ask you, do you personally have any memories of going on to the craft as a child?
I've been going on the craft since I was, I think, 3 months old.
Oh,
And
wow.
yes, I've been going up, and I have like a mother on the spaceship. And the first memory I have of going on the spaceship was in a room where it was a boy on one arm and me on the other arm. This Palladian, I think it was a Palladian hybrid kind of thing, because it looked very human. And there were probably about 20 cribs or incubators in this room, and it was kind of a round room. And she would put me down in and still hold the boy and connect me to all these things that would hook to my head, my whole my body. And then I would stay there for probably 20 minutes, and then she would switch out and the boy would go in, and then she would hold me. Now there was a lot, every incubator had somebody standing around with these two babies. Some of them had three babies in their arms. After they finished with us, we went into another room that was almost like a jumper, one of those houses where you bouncy
Hmm.
houses.
Hmm.
It came up to like the waist, and they just kind of shoved us in like a like in an oven, and we were in this like bouncy house, and that was almost like, I think, the recovery room. So we had all these babies around us, and then we would go home afterwards. And I'm just assuming that was giving us information. I really don't know what the purpose of all that was, but that started at least at 3 months old, if not even younger. But that is my first memory of that.
Okay. I know that a lot of people talk about on the craft that there are just hallways and rooms that are full of liquid containers that have fetuses in there at various stages. Have you ever witnessed that?
I have not witnessed that. I have heard that also, but I have not yet witnessed that. And that, I've even heard, them talking about and bringing them down, and the mother holding them and having contact. I haven't experienced that yet. Again, I think I will in the future. I think
Mhm.
they just kind of give me a little snippet here. You're doing this now, you're doing this now, and then it'll be this. Yeah, I'll get to see more of what happens on the whole process.
What is the most exciting thing that you've experienced while you were on the craft?
Well, learning how to fly it. Oh my gosh, learning how to fly a spaceship is so much fun. So I would say that I had a gold being, as I said, Monto from the star Solaris, and he came to me with another gold being. They didn't have a mouth, or they didn't have, and they didn't have ears. It was all telepathic communication, and they first took me up on the spaceship to just show me around. They were showing me around. And when I came home, I was going, oh, that's like orientation. I felt like orientation. They came back a few weeks later, and sure enough, I went back up again. Probably about the third or fourth or fifth time I went up. They had me. And then this was a tiny spaceship. This was not a big one. This is one I was learning how to fly, and I called it my little ambulance, because I felt like it was my ambulance that we were flying to these rescue missions. And this one, I had to put my palms up against like the windshield, but it wasn't a windshield. The spaceship looked like a big bubble with metal in the back, metal part in the back. But I had to put my hands up on the windshield or the window or whatever you want to call it. And all these colors came out, and I was integrated with the spaceship at that time, conscious.
Mm.
Now, as a human, we have trouble concentrating. we get so distracted on what's going on in our minds, and we're all over the place. So that was the hardest thing about learning how to fly a spaceship, was not to let all that stuff come in and distract me. I made so many mistakes. I had going through my mind one day, I'd like to see an ant on Earth, and we started taking off. And, you know, I, I made a lot of mistakes trying to land. I would land. One time I landed on this almost like a pyramid where we were up. Nobody could get out of the spaceship because we're just sitting there on top. But, I, that was probably the most exciting thing, was learning how to fly the spaceship.
Nice. Now, have you been to other planets as well?
Yeah, after my being a neurosurgeon on the spaceship, they gave me a promotion to be an interplanetary liaison, and that's I was going from planet to planet that time and hearing everybody's complaints. In fact, I'm writing my second book now, and it's about that those things right now. And I haven't published my first one, but it's right now with the editor, so it's getting close. But I've gone to all sorts of different planets and stars, and I've been to Venus, and I've been to Solaris, and all over the place. I think the most fascinating one was Cetus B, CETUS B. It's way out there. It's not one that we know much about, and it was a water planet. But the thing that I found out what I was doing and how I was traveling as an interplanetary liaison, I was traveling as my light body and going in. They pulled in a rack, and I put on a whale suit, and then went swimming with the whales and got the information from them on what was going on their planet. Earth was my hardest one. I went on with all the complaints because I reported back to the Galactic Federation about the complaints. But Earth, I had to talk to the owls, the trees, the dolphins,
Mhm.
Mother Earth. I had to talk to all these different things, and everybody had complaints on Earth. Whereas I go to another planet, it's like one person who gives me a complaint, and I'm going, "Oh my gosh, Earth!" So, yeah, I've been to all sorts of different planets and things. Venus is my favorite.
Mm. Now, has anyone spoken with you about timelines for the planet, for ascension specifically?
Um, I hear lots about that. I don't really buy into timelines. I know that seems to be like the popular word,
Hmm.
these days being thrown around. Um, but because for early on, they showed me that everything's happening at the same time. And well, how they demonstrated that to me was they had like two halos around my head that were going round and round all the time and going in different directions. And they had balls all over it. And they were going, those are your different lifetimes. When they cross over is when you start remembering a different lifetime. So timelines is not a term they use because time doesn't exist
Yeah.
really, because everything happens at the same time. So it might be me, just me, but I really have trouble with that terminology, timelines, and people saying we jumped the timeline. I don't get it. I don't understand it since it's all happening at the same time. But that might be me, Sheila. I just don't understand it. So I'm not one to talk about timelines.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious, because I know you've been to other ships and I know you've been to other planets. So I just wondered if anyone was talking about timelines because there's so much discussion now about the
It's
ascension.
I know it seems like timelines are the buzzword to me right now. And but the ascension, when it's going to happen, they don't even know. Is
Hmm.
how we progress and the things that we do.
Right.
Because in their eyes, they kind of look at us, and each alien's different. Each alien species different. It's hard to lump them in as a group like everybody wants to. Like it's black and white. This one does this and this, and they're all in one group. But most of them feel like we should have already ascended, that we should already be represented on um, the Galactic Federation with them. but we keep fighting. We keep having wars. We can't seem to get away from that. But we are supposed to be experiencing duality on this planet, but we can't seem to move away. If you look up on, and a friend of mine told me to do this, she goes, look up on Google and see how many days we haven't had a war or there hasn't been a fight. There's none. Earth has never not been fighting.
Mm.
So that's a big thing for us.
Now, a lot of people talk about that in our atmosphere, there is a multitude of crafts that are there from different species all over the planet because they're here watching as we go through this mass conscious awakening. So, on your various trips, have you noticed any additional craft in, I guess you would say, surrounding the planet?
There are lots of them surrounding the planet. So the answer to that is yes. In fact, when I'm talking about these hospital spaceships, like the Palladians have a hospital here, the Greys have a hospital here, the Arcturians have a hospital. These are spaceships that are representing as hospitals, and I was on the hybrid hospital, and so even those are around. Just in case somebody gets injured. So there's a lot more going on out there than we even know about the spaceships. And we just can't see them because they're in another dimension, but we get little snippets when they kind of roll into ours.
Okay. Now, I know you have this nursing background. Is
Mm-hmm.
that one reason that do you feel like that you were predestined to go into nursing because of your hybridization background? Was there some kind of calling, or did you do that after you became involved with the hybridization programs on the craft?
No, I feel like they planned, and that was another thing that I had trouble absorbing too. I feel like they have planned every step of my life. I feel like they planned for me to um, become a nurse. I think they planned for me to specialize in the operating room. I think they planned for me to specialize in open heart surgery and neurosurgery. And that was what would be needed on the spaceship. And then going back to chiropractic school, that was giving me a whole different look on how to treat medically. Then after that, I got a crash course in energy healing from a girl that I was paired up with to work with. I actually had in the very beginning someone else who lives in Massachusetts going on these rescue missions with me. And her role at hindsight was to teach me how to do energy healing, which was what she did. So they have planned every step of the way of what I do for being able to function on the spaceship.
Okay. So I want to ask kind of a personal question.
Okay.
What kind, excuse me, my allergies are acting up
I
here.
wish I could give you a cough drop.
Yeah, I've got those. What kind of an emotional journey have you been on with this? Because I can't imagine the toll that it's taken trying to live a normal life, having a job, going on the craft, and doing all of these things, delivering hybrid babies to people's homes. How have you handled that emotionally?
Well, I have been very fortunate to have a good friend. Her name is Meg, who was my only metaphysical friend at the time. And even when I first saw the angel that came to me, which I kept going, I think I have a brain tumor. I need an MRI. But she kept telling me I was okay. She says, I know you, I'm okay. But in the meantime, I had invested in real estate. And while I was going through nursing and chiropractic, I had invested in real estate. So when this happened and I was taking care of my dad with dementia, I was living off my real estate investments. So it was easier for me to roll into this because I did not have a structured job at that time.
Got it. Got it. So now, in your opinion, do you think that the hybridization program is happening on a large scale? I know that you're involved with it and you're part of it yourself, but do you have any knowledge of other types of hybridization programs that exist?
I don't, but I'm sure there are other hybridizations. I just think the gray hybrids are the ones that are the most prominent here on Earth doing the hybridization programs. And that's what I'm involved in. Maybe in the future I'll see others, but I've been on a lot of different spaceships and have not seen any. I've been on, the reptilians, the Arcturians, have been on the Palladians, and a lot of species that we don't really know about. And I've not seen any hybridization programs going on there, but it could be that with this spaceship is that's their main function, is the hybridization program. So that is that main function, even though a lot of what work I did when I first went on there was, as I said, taking out implants and helping people get through negative implants and working with their chakras, and we did a lot of light therapy. I was adjusting their hormones and chemistry, and also people who were having some psychological issues.
Uh-huh.
We had things that we could put on their head that would light up and change their brain chemistry, or their maybe the electrical system of the brain, and it would change that. And these were a lot of people who were depressed, who were suicidal, who could not shake these kind of things. That's when we were, what I was very involved with in the very beginning. And also that's also what I did when I went on the Athena, was a lot of that work too, because we had a lot of children who went through trauma through some of these wars, and we would change their brain waves so they would remember the trauma, but it would not affect them like it affects us, like physically, mentally. We would change the brainwaves so they could actually function in life. They would remember the incident, but it would not affect them. So there's a lot of good things they do.
Okay. Now, when you were removing the implants, can you talk about the different locations that you found them and maybe even what their purpose was?
Well, the ones I was removing were the negative implants. There's a lot of positive implants, and the positive implants is people getting direct information from either their star family or whoever they've agreed to work with. But the negative ones are the ones that are, we've got gifted people who they're wanting not to use their gifts, and they'll stick in these implants. The most common place is in the pineal gland, which is accesses the back of the neck, and also it would be anywhere on the body. We had a machine that looked like an X-ray machine that we would scan the body for these implants that we would take out, and then incinerate them in a little jar that just automatically incinerated them. But that's usually what it was. It's usually these gifted people that were being held back. And after we could get rid of the implants, they immediately would jump up a level and be okay. And their gifts would start coming out and being able to use it. That's usually what we were doing.
Okay. Now, are you aware if the nature of these programs have shifted over time? Because I know earlier there was like a lot of abductions that people were talking about. You don't hear about that as much anymore. So, has the program shifted?
No, it's not. Well, a little bit, I would say, shifted. I think it would be awareness, because before, they don't have the same kind of emotions we do. They did not know they were affecting us like they were when they were doing those things. So they look at those so-called abductions as their dark history, like our dark history is slavery. So they consider that their dark history. They didn't understand all the emotions that humans had. And so they are better equipped and able to deal with that now.
Okay. I've also heard that a lot of times the mantis will accompany the grays during these processes because they're able to kind of like exude these vibrational frequencies that begin to put people at ease. Have you witnessed that?
Yeah, very much so. And that's whenever I see somebody who's getting ready to go up the spaceship to have a medical procedure, it always seems to be a mantis being and two grays that are escorting them. The grays have an easier time coming down to 3D, where the mantis beings struggle to get down to that. So they're assisted by the grays to be able to bring them up to the spaceship. And then when they get to the spaceship and they're in a different dimension, that's when the mantis beings can really take over and calm the person down.
Okay. Um, yeah, I've got so many questions that's going through my mind. I know earlier you talked about the soul and how you would move one soul from one body into the other. Can you describe that process and how that's even possible?
Well, it's very possible for them, the soul actually moves above them. Like when their bodies, when they're going to stay in their body and they're rejuvenating the body, it's almost like a whirlpool that they're in with all these things and they're laying on their side. And you're looking down at yourself when that's happening. You're watching yourself heal. And so whenever it's healed, then they move the consciousness back in. How they do that, I'm not real sure. It seems like I was always taking care of the psychological one. They were always calling me, going, "This guy's freaking out," I'm
Right.
helpless. And but they did have the cloning machines too. So if that body was not able to be fixed or redone, they were also cloning the body, and just in case they needed to put the consciousness in that body.
Okay. I remember we had a speaker once who was talking. I can't think. Susie, I think you read the books too. Is it the Theobians? I
Yeah,
think that's how.
Theobian prophecy.
Yeah, the Theobians. Just wanted to make sure I was saying that right. The Theobians had a process where they would kind of astrally project the soul out of the body, and it could be walking around the ship while the body itself was receiving healing or upgrades or whatever was happening. And so I was just kind of curious if this was a similar process.
It is a similar process, but they're required to stay above their body
Mm.
because it is a hospital spaceship. They would be walking into all sorts of kind of traumas that they wouldn't need to see.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because this gentleman who had gone on the Theobian ship actually was, I guess, receiving a quick galactic lesson and galactic history. So while they were working on the body, they were also trying to educate him, and he was actually able to move about.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that
Yeah.
probably wasn't on. What that was probably just
The
doing that on.
Theobian, yeah, the
Yeah,
Theobians.
yeah, yeah, and probably on a much smaller ship that did not do all these traumas.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you've seen a lot. What
I've seen a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What is probably the most phenomenal experience? I know you said, piloting the craft, but what have you seen that was like the most phenomenal experience?
Well, for me, probably the next most phenomenal experience was when I went on the astromedical one for the first time. I asked if I, because we kept delivering these aliens to these different spaceships, I wanted to start being able to go on the spaceships and see them. So they agreed for me to come on. They put me in a bubble because they told me I was not be able to tolerate all the different vibrations and different aliens on the spaceship at that time. Eventually, I was able to. Now, whenever any of this happens to me, like even in the very beginning, I was, before we even went on my first spaceship, they told me to go on a bland diet for 5 days. And bland diets, of course, is only eating rice and noodles and breads and things like that. And I didn't know why, but I went, "Oh, why not? I'll go." But anyway, I was so relieved that I did, because after I came back from that experience, I was sick for 2 weeks. The only thing I could eat, or only thing I could tolerate, was bread. And that kept happening to me every time I would go up on the spaceship, and it got better and better and better. So when I was going on this larger spaceship, the Astromedical One, they were protecting me because of, but my reaction might be worse or whatever. I don't know, but I didn't have as much of a reaction when they put me in the bubble and let me go. Oh, she had put me in the bubble when I went on that first spaceship, so I wouldn't have been so sick afterwards. But anyway, that's hindsight. But anyway, so I would say that going on there and realizing, this was my biggest realization, was because it looks so much like the movies that for me, I have always been a Star Trek, Star Wars. I have always been a sci-fi fan. And when I went on that spaceship and saw how similar this was to that, I realized, thinking all these people were so creative, realizing that they were all channeling the information. They were all getting this information. They weren't that creative. They all had it and just were putting it out there. And that probably busted my bubble doing that. But I would say going on that spaceship was another big thing for me. And then probably, my first rescue mission going into a facility where I was rescuing. Actually, it was a mantis being I was rescuing. That getting him out of a cell, getting him out, getting him safe. That probably would have been another big one too. But we did a lot of missions like that. And Antarctica was the one that scared me the most.
Okay, so what about Antarctica scared you?
I'm not real sure what about Antarctica. I think it's because their detection equipment was far superior than a lot of the other ones. That we would we were able to go be invisible when we would approach the facility, but to bring somebody up in the spaceship, we had to be visible. So we were vulnerable for 30 seconds to a minute while we're getting these people up out of these facilities and going. And because of Antarctica having such special equipment, I was so worried about us being detected before we were even able to go visible and bring these aliens up.
Wow. Wow. I know we've kind of jumped around on a lot of different subjects, still with under the same umbrella,
Yes,
talking about
yeah.
the hybridization program, etc. But is there anything that we have not talked about tonight that you want to share with our audience?
Oh, we have been all over the place. Um, I'm not real sure. There's so many things. I would say my book probably will be out before the end of the year. That will be going into more details. And this first book is just about my rescue missions. And uh, that will that will give a lot more details about what's happening on there. But I would say, yeah, I think you hit on the biggest thing about the abductions are not really abductions, that they are actually helping the people. They're wanting to see how they're reacting to Earth, and also to um, help their health or whatever's going on with them. So that's only been good. And I would say that would be the biggest thing I would have to say. And again, I'm not real sure why I'm able to see these things, because I can see them, whereas most people either feel them or maybe hear them. But am very vivid on what I see, and
Mm.
I never have understood. Everybody's going, "I want to see like you do," and I'm going, "I think I'm the odd one, not you. I'm the one. Why can I see?" Why can't I see these things? Why do I remember these experiences? I mean, I know I'm the communicator, but I'm not still real sure why I am the one that can see these things and remember what's happening to me. Because I
Wow.
think a lot of us are doing these things at night while we sleep. And, even I would say yesterday, occasionally, I'll have the missing time like a lot of us do. And yesterday was one of those times where I had an hour and a half of missing time. I had a show to do that afternoon, and I was a little out of it. I'm going, oh my gosh. And I was answering people's questions and channeling information. And I wasn't real sure how that was going to go, because I was still kind of reeling from going wherever I went. I don't remember where I went at that time, but I do probably at least once a month. I have some missing time that I don't remember. And it's probably a good thing that I don't remember, because some of the things I've done have been pretty horrendous.
Mhm.
And I have not told all the things I do, nor will I ever write everything that I do in the books.
Okay. All right. I have one other question that I just have to ask.
Okay.
When you go up in the craft, are the planets round or are they flat?
Uh, they're round. but not exactly round. Even Earth to me doesn't look totally round. It looks almost, well, you know where the equator is. Sometimes
Elliptical. Mm-hmm.
it'll be a little in on that part. I mean, sometimes it's round, but sometimes it kind of fluctuates.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a different. And the planets also are most of them around. None. I've never seen any flat ones. I'll eliminate that, but I've seen them mostly round.
Just asking. Just had to ask. Because I was talking with someone today and um, they were
They're,
really talking about the flat earth theory and so I'm like,
we have
okay, I know who I'm going to ask
But
tonight.
the flat Earth theory, I just don't understand that one either because we would just walk off and fall off, and also gravity wouldn't work on a flat surface. I don't quite how understand, and I've got the scientific background, so I'm going to be one that's looking at gravity and things like that, going, how can they think it's flat? Gravity just wouldn't work like that
Just
anyway.
asking. Just asking. Okay. All right. So I want to thank you so much for being here. And if people would like to get a hold of you, how could they do that?
Well, I have a YouTube channel, which is Dr. Gail Skywalking with Moon, and is geared towards people who are having experiences to be able to come in and talk about them. And I can help either validate what's happening to them or try to explain what's going on. And also, I have my email address is drgailstarseed@gmail.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, we did have a question that just popped up. Someone else is just dying to ask you something. It says, do you think that a lot of the adopted children are hybrids?
Yes. Because one of the things I did not talk about was when I took this baby to the California couple, we took adoption papers with us. So they would have adoption papers and they were very legal. So, yes. And also, we were allowed, whenever they took a hybrid baby, I would do a medical procedure that would allow them to have their own child after that. So they were granted to be able to have their own child after that too. So there's a lot more to those programs than that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming and, sharing your experiences. I'm looking forward to reading your book, so I can't wait till it's out.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sheila. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who was watching, sending everyone much love. Have a beautiful week and namaste. We'll
Okay.
see you later, everybody. Bye bye.